If you're newer to the world of whiskey, it can get very confusing trying to navigate when it comes to single barrels. So we're here to try to help. Which one are you choosing?
This one, because I can finish it. Welcome to another edition of Drinking with Craig and Roger. I'm Roger.
And I'm Craig.
Today, we're going to talk about single barrel whiskeys.
Yay! Love them.
Yeah, most whiskeys are blended together in a huge batch of many barrels to try and keep its taste consistent, because each barrel ages the whiskey a little differently.
For sure. So that's why you have stuff like many people's beloved Jack Daniel's Old Number 7, which they expect to taste the same every time, and pretty much does. And you can only get that by doing, thousands of different barrels together. But each barrel tastes a little different, it has different qualities. And so as you start talking about getting to smaller and smaller numbers, you have more room for variances. So when you start talking about this, we got to go back to, how does bourbon or scotch or any whiskey get its flavor? I think I've seen it said 80% or more of the flavor in a whiskey comes from the barrel itself and the aging in the barrel, right?
Right, and the other 20% comes from the nature of the grain and how much has been left of the original wort in the distillation.
Definitely. So you can start with the same distillate, the same juice. It's all the same, right, for so many different products. And then they put it into a barrel. And with bourbon, it's a first use charred oak barrel. And then in scotch, it's a variety of other different kind of barrels. But they will put the same juice in there, and then they stack the barrels in these rick houses that are not temperature, climate controlled. And depending how high up it is in there, it's hotter. And then they have windows all over the place, right? So breezes blow in certain sections of the warehouse. So they have, these well-known areas that produce the best aging effects on a whiskey. And but then some others may not get it as well, right? So over time, over 6, 8, 10, 15, 20 years, the differences between these barrels and where they're located can really impact the flavor in color, oakiness, funkiness, sweetness, all these kind of different things.
For instance, here is a small batch, 4 roses, and here's a single barrel, and I think you can see that the single barrel is darker because it's got more of the barrel and the charcoal in it.
Yeah, and that because this particular one has been aged quite a long time, 11 years, I believe.
And here is a Lindores, which I picked up in Scotland when I was there, and this is their normal product. And here is a single barrel. And you can see there's a slight difference.
Slight difference.
We won't taste these today, but in the upcoming video we will.
Yeah, that'll be fun. But for instance, they may take, in Scotland, they may age the same distillate in sherry barrels and bourbon barrels, ex-bourbon barrels, and European oak barrels. And then they may take those juice, from all these different barrels and blend them together to create their signature flavor. But, this one very clearly was aged in a very wet sherry cask, and it's going to taste dramatically different than their standard bottling. So it gets pretty interesting. So the different levels, if you're looking at labels in the store, right? You've got, let's say, Knob Creek. Okay, you've got Knob Creek 9-year-old. That's their standard bottling, and that's going to be the one on your right there, right here. Right there. So this is their standard bottling. It's 100 proof, and it's many different barrels combined. And I think we can actually have a good comparison on these, so we're going to try them. We've got their standard bottling, and then we have 2 different single barrel store picks of Knob Creek. Different stores, different ages. They are at 120 proof. So why, you talk about why would you get a single barrel versus a large batch product? And it's because you have the opportunity to try them with lots of different variances, strengths, ages that you might not normally have the chance to try.
Yeah. In the old days, someone used to say, I drink blank, and that's it. And they wanted it to be the same all the time. But in the last few decades, people have gotten more interested in different tastes and would like to see a different expression of things.
Absolutely. And if you're a fan of Knob Creek, then it makes sense. You might want to try something, a version of that that's a little different. So today we definitely should start pouring these because I want to taste the difference.
All right.
Let's shove these to the side here. All right, so let's give these a try just to kind of get a foothold into what we're talking about here. This is our normal Knob Creek 9-year here that you can get for quite a good price for what it is. High quality, 100 proof, good bourbon.
I smell.
Yep, it's plenty strong. It's got a lot going for it. Now on the right here, this is what they call a single barrel store pick. So this is coming from one barrel. This particular one was aged for 11 years, and it was selected by and sold at a store. So you'll normally see, when you go into a store, you'll usually have an option as far as single barrels for ones that the distillery puts out and sells.
Those will probably be on the shelves lined up with the rest of the whiskeys.
Yeah, it'll be right there with everything else. But then, so that's the distillery selecting that barrel. So in cases like that, the distillery is saying this barrel that we tried is maybe a little bit more exceptional than some of the others that we might put into a batch, or it stands out in some way. So we're going to put this out and give you a chance to try what this particular expression tastes like.
Right, and they will ship these bottles, of which they're only less than 55 gallons, so that's less than 200 bottles.
Yeah, usually 200 to 300.
They'll ship them out, maybe 2 or 3 to a store, and you may have to get in a lottery to buy one of them.
That can happen sometimes. But generally, I mean, there can be those very limited editions. But generally, you will find things like, for instance...
Knob Creek here.
Here. For instance, George Dickel, we've got a single barrel from them that's sold. Each store will carry them. They're not selected by stores, they're selected by the distillery. This particular one is 15 years, and the strengths will vary. This one's 50% alcohol, and it's quite good. And there's another one somewhere. Here's another one that you can get that's not selected by a store, but is sent out to stores. Another Dickel. This is a 9-year version, and they're going to taste quite different. So those you can find in most places, but what is of most interest to a lot of people is store pick single barrels. So stores, package stores, grocery stores, or sometimes even whiskey groups or celebrities will have a chance to either go to a distillery or have a variety of samples mailed to them by the distillery. But they have a chance to try stuff directly from many different barrels. And they will select ones that, depending on the store, you kind of have to get to know their taste. But it may be what they think is the best tasting version of that whiskey that they can find. Or it may be one that just tastes remarkably different from the standard version.
Yeah, these will generally be near the front of the store on displays separate.
Like a barrel on top of a barrel or an end cap. And they will usually they'll have an indicator on there like this one says selected by Short Barrel. But many of them will have the name of a store on there. And usually they are bottled at higher strengths than the standard bottlings or even the distillery single barrel offerings, so they can be interesting. So let's give this a try.
Okay.
It should be fairly different here.
Okay, 9-year-old.
Standard 9-year-old. That's good.
Very nice.
Got a lot going for it. Almost, I'm getting a prominent nuttiness on this one, kind of peanut flavor. It's got a lot of heat and a good strength. There's a lot going on there.
Very smooth.
And the price is quite nice on this one. I think these are normally about $45.
Something like that.
Which is really good for 9-year bourbon. Now on the right, we're going to try the short barrel version. Now, like I mentioned, this has more age and a higher proof. And it definitely smells different. This has a richer smell. A little more candy bar smelling to me. And a little oak. A little more oak than the 9-year, I think. Which would be expected on the age. Surprisingly smooth.
Very smooth.
Yeah, and considering it's 10% stronger, you would not know.
Oh, you wouldn't know
If
it.
you had these blind,
No.
I might even think this was a lower proof. This bottle's been open for some time, so it's had time to kind of mellow out. This is a neck pour of this Knob Creek, but either way, that's fine. But this, I would say this has more character to it.
Well, it's softer. That's generally what happens to a whiskey as it ages in the barrel.
Right.
It gets softer and softer. After a while, it's like people. It gets too old,
It can.
It can.
They can get, especially bourbon can get over oaked.
Yeah.
So they really they have to be very selective about, as they get older, about which ones they use. And, if you really wanted it, I do have another. God, I wish I'd bought more of these when they were available. This is a store pick from a local package store that is 15-year aged and 120 proof of Knob Creek. And it was the same price as this one at the time. I think it was about $65. I mean, that's unheard of now. I really wish I had more of these, but I still have one. We're not going to bother trying it today, but trust me, you can taste quite a difference from the other two on this one as well. So you have multiple options, and single barrel picks are not created equal. You have a wide variety. You need to look at the age, if it specifies a different kind of a barrel, and you also need to think about, if you get a sense for the person or the group that's picking them, what their tastes are like. Because if you find a store that has a single barrel that you love, they're probably going to be real good at picking the others there too.
Now, you will notice that if it's a single barrel, they almost always tell you what barrel it was,
Yeah.
when it was put in the barrel, when it was taken off, and what number bottle it is from that barrel.
Do I care? No, but some people seem to. It's nice to have the transparency.
Oh, it's nice. It's nice.
Yeah. So yeah, in bourbon, single barrel is huge business. Huge business. And it all started, the granddaddy of single barrel bourbons is the most well-marketed bourbon in the world, Blanton's. In 1984, it was the first commercially available single barrel bourbon, where the concept was pretty unique, I believe.
Well, do you think that maybe part of the prestige has to do with the corks, which have a series of horses and riders on
Absolutely.
them, race horses?
Yeah.
And there's a different one for each letter. And what it does is the first one is standing, and then they start running, and then they stop.
Yeah.
And there are 7 total.
Yeah.
It cost a lot of money to get 7 of them, all 7, buying the whiskey. But I was at Buffalo Trace, and they had a barrel of these things, and said, "Here, you can get the tops here." And so I did, and I have, 7 of them.
Nice. I heard that there was something you could mail those in and get something special. I'm not sure if that's legit or not.
I don't know, but I'm not going to.
You like the display. At least you did that. Some people buy them and pay good money for them on eBay, which is ridiculous. But anyways, yes, that's Blanton's. So this kind of created the boutique-y single barrel thing. So bourbon definitely owes a lot to Blanton's, no doubt. Although a lot of people love Blanton's, okay, this is a single barrel product, and it's going to vary for every barrel. One bottle of Blanton's could be great, and another one could be kind of mediocre.
I doubt it.
It happens. I mean,
It shouldn't.
Not to a huge range, but when you start talking about these little differences, they can make a big difference in how people perceive things. So single barrel is kind of a two-headed dragon. Just because something says single barrel doesn't mean it's better.
No.
Yeah.
And remember, most of these are bourbon, and bourbon has very little difference about what you can do with it, because it has to be distilled at about 130 proof, no more. It has to be bottled, or rather put in a barrel at about 125 proof or something like that. The barrels have to be new charred oak barrels.
Yep.
And so, there's not that much variance, so you're not
true.
going to taste a remarkable difference in the bourbon like you can a Scotch, because there's much more variety that you can in the way they handle it.
Yeah.
So you can get stuff that tastes like you're in a fire with smoke, and then stuff that is absolutely clear and clean.
Yeah,
Perfect.
It's amazing.
It's
And
amazing.
that is why that realization, after I accumulated quite a bit of bourbon, that realization is one of the things that has led me to be much more interested in Scotch lately, because of its massive variety. Which brings us to Scotch. I know we're still sipping on this, but
Oh yeah, here's an
Yeah.
Isle of Arran.
Yes.
It's a private cask selection from 5 Points Bottle Shop, and it has the same information here: when it was distilled, when it was put in the barrel, when it was taken out of the barrel and bottled, what number bottle this is out of that barrel.
Yes. And this particular one was matured in an ex-bourbon barrel, and it lists the date for 8 years. My current feeling, single barrel is a big business in bourbon, but it's pretty rare in Scotch still. And my current policy is, if I see a store pick single barrel of Scotch, as long as it's not too expensive, I buy it. Because all the ones I've had have been awesome.
Well, if you run into a 25-year-old Macallan single barrel, I think you're going to have to mortgage your house to buy that little thing.
Absolutely. However, the store pick aspect means the store bought that barrel, and they bought all the bottles from that barrel. There's no store that's going to plunk down $1 million for a 25-year-old bottle. So you're going to usually find those in younger ages, or at least under 20-ish years, because they got to buy it to begin with.
Well, they also can do this: buy the barrel when it's newly off the still, and let it age, and they own it while it ages.
Now we're talking about an independent bottler,
Yeah.
which is another aspect of single barrel, but that's primarily in the Scotch realm.
Well, they will do that there, but in bourbon they will do this. They will let the store own that, or a person own that barrel, and let it age right there with everything else.
Right.
And then they will bottle it for you, and you'll get maybe 300 bottles.
Yeah, I have seen that too. But that whole aspect, the independent bottler is another very important thing if you're looking at Scotch or even Irish whiskey, and it's a great thing. Here I have an example. This is an independent bottler called Mossburn, and what they've done is they bought a barrel of Linkwood Scotch. Now, Linkwood is a distillery that doesn't even bottle their own product. It's made for blends.
Not today, but there was a time about 25 years ago when the distillery was bottling it. I used to buy it by the case because it was not very expensive and it was really good.
Yeah, I bet, because this one's really good. I got this at a local store, Greens, and so they bought this cask and it aged, probably not by Linkwood, probably by this independent bottler. It aged for 12 years in a cognac cask, and it's bottled at cask strength, 58%, and it is awesome. And it is significantly cheaper to buy this. I think it's $65 in Greens. Then if you're going to find another 12-year Scotch in some kind of cask like that at cask strength, that's typically going to be about $100 anywhere else today.
And a little bit of trivia. Linkwood at one time was noted for having the master distiller refuse to have even cobwebs removed because he was afraid it might change the taste of the whiskey.
You gotta love that. You gotta love it.
Well, they're really kind of superstitious.
Yeah. Well, it's great stuff, and they're still in business, so he couldn't have been doing too much wrong. But yeah, that's a great thing. Definitely, if you're into Scotch, I would definitely check out some independent bottlings. They're quite interesting, and they're almost always put out with no chill filtering, no artificial color, at higher strength. So you get a great, impression.
Well, while you've been talking,
Yes.
I've been continuing to sip on this stuff,
Yeah.
and I'm ready for another pair.
Okay. We have another one lined up. These are good. What's your preference of these two? Do you have a preference?
It's hard to say because the 9-year-old is a little bit more fresh and brashness to it.
It is.
And the older one is a little softer. So it depends on whether you want your whiskey to have a little bit of youth and get up and go on it, or whether you want it to be a little bit more laid back and, and soft on your tongue.
Yeah, I definitely prefer the 11-year, but the 9-year-old is great as well. And now you basically can't find a Knob Creek single barrel store pick that's older than 9 years. So, you know, it'd be good for a change of pace, but...
And, you know, got a 9-year-old
Yeah.
and a
11-year-old,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and, you know, considering that bourbon is considered age enough to drink at 3 years, and I've had some that's younger than that, this is, you know, pretty well along the line.
Oh, yeah.
Almost all bourbons that are at least run of the mill are aged 5 to 6 years, and that's about it. So when you see something that says ancient age on it, okay, that means it's probably 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
You know, and if there's ancient, maybe 8 years. You know.
Ooh.
Wow. Yeah. Okay, so here we have one that's 9 and one that's 11, so
Yes.
they're beyond that.
Yeah.
But they're not too far. If you see a 30-year-old bourbon, it's
You probably want to
gonna-
pour it down the drain.
It's probably, well, I wouldn't pay what they're asking for it because, you know, you can get a much nicer drink for a lot less.
Yeah,
Anyway.
that's too old for bourbon. That's pretty old for Scotch, and that's going to be mega expensive. But
Well,
yes. Anyway.
all right, so for our second little tip here, what do you want?
So I think we've got these Four Roses. Okay, so here we have Four Roses small batch, and then we have a Four Roses single barrel proof. And this is Four Roses is a super interesting example. All right.
The single barrel looks a little redder to me.
Yeah, it's darker. Now this particular one, this is a store pick single barrel. And this particular one is from Empire Package, and it is 10 years, 2 months. So this small batch has no age on it. We can guess it's probably 6 to 8 years.
Something like that.
So this definitely has more age on it, but not only that, this small batch is 45% alcohol, 90 proof, and this single barrel store pick is 58% alcohol. So it's got quite a chunk of concentration over it. It's about 13% alcohol stronger. So it's got a lot going for it in terms of flavor, but Four Roses, coincidentally, interesting distillery. They have 10 different recipes they use. So they use about 3 or 4 of the recipes in the small batch, I think. And then the single barrel proof, gives you a chance to try just one of the recipes. So these should be quite different from each other, I think. Let's try it. Let's give it a whirl.
Yeah,
Here's the small batch.
They smell different.
The small batch is very good and also a very good value.
Oh, it's also very, very colorful to the nose. Boy, I smell grain there.
Bright.
Bright. It's got a lot of sweet. Yeah, a lot of grain.
Very smooth on the oak. Like,
Oh yeah.
it smells great. Let's give it a
It's
try.
terrific.
Nice.
That is nice. Oh man.
Very
The
smooth.
grain, the husk of the grain, you know,
Yeah.
is right there on the finish and into the body of it. But in the finish, it sort of almost dominates. But there is that caramel taste that's
Yeah,
throughout the
definite
whole thing.
caramel. Yep. This is almost everything you'd want in a normal bourbon. It's a very, very good bourbon.
Oh, it's one I would never mix with anything.
No,
It's too nice by itself.
it is. It is. Now, what I will say is it doesn't have a ton of character. And that might not be what you want. So let's try this single barrel here.
Okay.
Ooh.
The smell is a little more subdued compared to
You think so?
Oh yeah, to the small batch.
I think certain things in it are more concentrated. For instance, on this one, I'm getting a little bit of like almost vanilla frosting type of flavors.
Yeah.
Or
I
scents.
just don't smell the grain, the husk.
No, I don't as well. And I wonder if that could be from more age.
Very caramel,
Remarkably easy to drink for its strength.
very smooth. It really doesn't have that little touch of the husk, the fuzz that you get, you know, in it that the 9-year-old does. That
I agree.
but it's a terrific drink.
Very good. This particular one, in case anybody was wondering, this recipe is OESQ, which they describe on here as OESQ: floral, rose petals and acacia, floral, rose petal and acacia, banana, refreshing, medium body.
They're trying to suggest things you should smell. That's another thing that, you probably have heard this from us before, or from me before, but, the power of suggestion has a lot, of influence on how you perceive things.
That's 100% true. Is this why you're always telling me how funny you are?
Me funny? When have I said anything funny?
Since we're talking about Four Roses and all 10 other recipes, perhaps for a future video, we have all 10 recipes in their own little bottle. Wow, okay, so now they've had a little more time to the air. I am smelling a big difference. This single barrel is a lot darker and richer smelling. And when you go back to the small batch, it's a little brighter, thinner, a little bit sharper. It smells really good too, but there's a definite difference in concentration between them. You're not picking it up? A little more cinnamon?
No. I'm thinking maybe I like the small batch better. The only thing I can think of to do is to add a little bit of water to this.
What? Sorry. Ooh, the oak has really come out on here. Wow, that is some oak. They are very different. Yes, let's add some water.
A little bit of water to bring it down to the same level, close to the same level.
Yeah.
And see.
Okay, let's add a little bit of water and a little bit of time. We've tried to get them closer to the same strength.
I can tell you, if I were thinking in musical terms, which I can do, I think the small batch one, 9-year-old, is about a step higher.
Okay.
Than the single barrel, about 10-year-old.
So we're thinking like
dum dum. It's the same as do re.
Well, it did sound
bum bum bum.
It did sound dumb.
Bum bum. That's what I smell in musical terms.
So there you go. You know which one to buy based on which note you like more.
Yeah, if you like something that's a little higher pitched and a little brighter tasting and whatever else, you got this one here.
I definitely prefer the single barrel over the small batch.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. I like the small batch better myself.
Okay. So I hope this helps give you a little bit of a foothold on what to look for and what to expect, and go out there and explore. It's kind of fun. If you like what we're doing, please like this video. That's the easiest way to help the channel. Subscribe to see what we're doing next, and let us know what you think about single barrels, and if there's any particular brand that you like that just has a killer program that you always buy, whatever's going on there, right?
Just remember, if we're talking about a single barrel of something, there are only like 300 bottles of that are floating around.
Yeah.
But the distillery has another single barrel bottling, which is going to be fairly similar. So, don't shy away from it because it doesn't match the barrel and the bottle number. Just consider what we thought of it and how nice it was. And we haven't had anything of it here that wasn't terrific, This is great.
Yeah, everything has been great because we only buy good stuff generally because we're savvy buyers that watch our own videos.
Anyway.
All right.
So.
Yes.
Thanks for watching.
Yes.
Until next time.
Cheers.
Cheers. Darn. This single barrel doesn't seem to screw off.
You gotta pull.
You like that?
Yeah, there we go.